Hello everyone, and today I am going to teach you how I more easily learned the notes of the guitar fretboard. First of all, if you already know a subject or need to review it, there should be chapters available and timestamps in the description for skipping or reviewing. This is not going to teach you any special shapes or any way to just look at the fretboard and just know what the notes are, at least not without some practice. This is just going to be an explanation of the concept and how to identify and remember the structure, which for the most part is really all you need, at least in the beginning. Now let me give credit where credit is due. I mainly learned this subject from two different videos. I watched a few, but these were the two that mainly made it all click and come together. And I'm going to be trying to bring all that information together to try and make this even easier for you. The first video was Memorize the Fretboard in 3 minutes by Red Light Blue. Great in concept, not so great in practice. Honestly, I don't even really like this video. I don't even actually think of it as a good video, at least for educational purposes. But there was one thing that really stuck with me that helped make this process a little bit easier. It also probably stuck better because it was one of the parts where he actually slowed down to an acceptable pace, where you wouldn't have to listen to what he was saying over and over again just to analyze the words that he was saying and then actually try and retain what it actually means. But we'll talk about that later in the actual lesson portion. Next was how to memorize the notes of the fretboard by Guitar 0 to Hero. This goes much more into depth and actually lays everything out at a proper learning pace. Because of this, it made the whole subject a whole lot clearer and understandable, even without me watching the whole video, so props to this channel. However, they do have some more exercises, and it will be a great resource if you still aren't understanding by the end of my video. So if that sounds like something you want to check out, there should be a link in the description, or hopefully an iCard up above. So let's get into the actual lesson portion of the video. The first thing you will need to know is the notes of your open strings. These are the notes you have tuned to. So we have E, A, D, G, B, E. These are the notes of the standard guitar tuning. These are also the first notes in your scale. This lesson also applies to any other tuning, but the notes will be shifted compared to standard tuning. And the notes on your open strings will repeat on the 12th and 24th fret if you have that many. These are called octaves. Once you hit 12, you have completed your first scale. So I've talked about and mentioned the phrase hour scale a few times. So let's get a better definition on that for our purposes. This lesson will be teaching you essentially the most basic scale. There are many different scales. Typically they are more complex. But the simple one I am referring to now is the musical alphabet scale. The musical alphabet works in the same order as the normal English alphabet, just a lot shorter and with some kind of half letters in there. To demonstrate and work off this, let's demonstrate with the simplest string to understand, the A string, or your 5th string. I'll be going up the neck by whole notes instead of including sharp notes for now. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So let's talk about the gaps in my scale here, the notes I skipped. What are they? Half notes? Well, kinda. But we don't usually call them that when we're talking about the musical alphabet. Though sometimes while doing a scale, they are called half steps or half notes. When talking about alphabetical notes, these are sharps and flats. An important thing to understand is that sharps and flats are kind of interchangeable, but most times people just use the sharps for simplicity. I will explain a bit more about sharps and flats here now, but if you are trying to take all this new information in all at once, it may be a little bit confusing. So I suggest skipping past these details if it's your first watch through. Typically people refer to the half notes as sharps when going up a scale, and then flats when going down a scale. Additionally, the letter notes change when going from sharps and flats and vice versa due to the scale order. This can be an easy concept to understand, but hard to remember and memorize. So now you may have noticed that there are 2 sharp gaps missing. These are between B and C, as well as E and F. Why is this way? Well, honestly, I can't tell you. Probably some advanced science or other genius methodology, but it is the way it is. So your next question might be, how am I supposed to remember those notes don't have gaps when all the other ones do? And this is where that speedy yet mostly ineffective video by Red Light Blue comes in. Some people use numbers or other methods. This, however, is a crudely put together pseudo mnemonic, or phrase relating to letters to remember something such as a sequence. There was a part in this guy's video where he asked the exact same question, and his answer was basically this: because everything's fucked. Sorry if you're a younger learner, but I found this answer to be hilarious, simply because that's how a lot of other standards feel, such as the English language. Take the word mnemonic for instance. In school, I was not trained in the works of the essentially silent M, but there are really no rules to English when you get down to it, so. But back to the lesson. This phrase, however, was a memorable, however not perfect, mnemonic. The letters we need to remember in the gaps between are B and C, and E and F. So we take the consonants of the first word, because. Then we use the first letters of the rest of the words. Everything's fucked. This is a crude way to remember this structure, both in terms of its structure and vulgarity, but it has been a great help to me and a staple in my retention of the subject. So now let's go through the whole A string. We start with our open note, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, and we end on A. That is one whole octave. And we could continue to the next octave if we wanted to, which would be past the 12th fret. But instead of having an open string, we start on the 12th fret. From there, we repeat our scale until the 24th fret if you have it. However, many guitars come with only 21 or 22. These repeats happen because these are the same notes, they are just at a higher pitch. This is the same with the same notes on different strings, they are just higher or lower pitches. When we do the inverse and go down the scale, you can either still think of the half notes as sharps for simplicity, or you can think of them as flats. I will now demonstrate the full flat scale on the A string starting from the 12th fret. Now, one thing to note is that our pseudo mnemonic does not really work when going backwards, unless you think of it backwards. So we have A flat, G, G flat, F, E, E flat, D, D flat, C, B, B flat, and once again we end on open A. Personally, I don't worry about flats, and for the most part I think other people don't really either, but I still showed it for the sake of explanation. So now I will put up the visual aids of the alphabetical scale of the A string, both in sharp and in flat. Notice how the notes are technically different, though in reality they are the same. Now, like I said before, this method works with all tunings, as long as you know what the bass notes are. To start, let's start with essentially the most basic alternate tuning, drop D. This is essentially the same as E standard, but with your low E or your 6th string tuned to D instead. So now the note sequence on your fretboard for your 6th string is now the same as your 4th string. To shorten the explanation, I will again only be playing the whole notes. So, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And then on the 4th string, D, E, F, G. As you can see, same thing. And now, just to seal the deal, I will show you the music alphabetical scale on this guitar tuned to drop B. We know the bass note of our thick E string or 6th string is now B. So we just start from there in our musical alphabet. Again, we're going to only play whole notes. So open B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. But because this is also a drop tuning, our 6th and 4th string are again the same. B, C, D, E, and so on and so forth. So this was essentially just a long-winded way to say that the positions are different with different tunings, however it is the same scale. So I will now show you the basic exercise that I did to memorize and learn the fretboard. I will admit this is exercise 1 from Guitar 0 to Hero's video, but he may have more to elaborate on it in his video. I don't really know because this is around when I stopped watching. So this is going to be essentially an explanation of the first demonstration I did, but with all the knowledge that we have learned so far. So we are going to use our easiest string for our example again, the A string or the 5th string. Our first step is to know the string's tuning. This may seem redundant for our purposes currently, but it is an important step if you're using alternate tunings. In this exercise, we are going to be only playing the whole notes, as I have been, and then saying them aloud as we're playing, as I have been. If you want additional musical practice, you could try matching your voice to the notes, but if you are just beginning, I just recommend playing the notes and saying them. So, let's begin. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And now you would do the same thing for the rest of the strings. But remember, it's about the notes, not the positions. So you will typically not be playing the same positions on all of your strings. A tip I learned from Guitar 0 to Hero's video is that if you are doing the exercise properly, you will start on your open string and end on your 12th fret. If you didn't end on your 12th fret, then something has been messed up. So again, you should always start on an open string and always end on the 12th fret. And that is the basics of finding the notes on the fretboard. If you still feel fuzzy on some subjects or didn't watch the sharps and flats section, I recommend going in the timestamps or in the chapters and going and reviewing those sections. If that doesn't make it all clear, or you still want more practice resources, then I highly recommend you go and watch Guitar 0 to Hero's video. There should be a link to it in the description below. Now, I don't normally do music tutorials, however I do normally cover musical gear, and then I also do a variety of other things including 3D printing and generally whatever I feel like sometimes. So if all that sounds good, then please consider subscribing. We are getting close to the amount of subscribers needed to start getting paid for your watched ads, so again, please consider subscribing. That's all I have to say for now, so I'm gonna say bye-bye.